Antonio, let's talk about the army itself. Much more popular than Temer, who's in single digits in terms of his poll ratings. And even during Dilma Rousseff's time, when protests were happening against her government, there were calls actually for the military to come and rule again, like it did in the 80s. Is this, how much of this, the army being back on the streets, gives an echo of those times, and what can happen?
I think the number one reason why the army has been deployed, and in fact it hasn't been deployed for the first time now, it has been deployed to Rio a few times, as some of your guests already said.
That's right. This is the first time it's this type of operation. Yeah.
Yes. So I think the number one reason is that its prestige, its image has been less tainted as that of the police forces in many of these cities across Brazil. It's not just a problem in Rio de Janeiro. So I don't think it has echoes of the military regime. I think the concerns of human rights violations that might occur because of the way that our armed forces are trained has certainly to be discussed because it's not the role of the armed forces to be in internal security. But the reason it was deployed is because the in-house security institutions in Rio are in a state of calamity, to be quite frank. A large chunk of its fleet of cars cannot be out in the street because it's simply waiting for repair. It does not have the numbers that is required to patrol this city with so many, as I said, so many territories controlled by armed groups. And it's not just a problem of homicide rates. Rio is not among the most violent cities in the world, but it has areas that are patrolled, that are controlled by organized criminal groups that exhibit the weapons publicly and are armed with military-grade rifles. So that is one of the security concerns that were behind this decision. Obviously, there are political motivations in the timing, in the choice of Rio as a tourist capital to be chosen. There are political reasons behind this. But without the security crisis, without this criminal underworld behind it, there would be no justification for it.
Hugo, President Temer has also created a new ministry, the Ministry of Public Security. Let's listen to what that minister said regarding this intervention. I'll ask you a question off the back.
There is no carte blanche or black and gray. Let me be clear that the military will not be exercising or replacing police work.
So, Hugo, in your opinion, what exactly is the role of the army going to be here, and where are the limitations?
Well, I think this issue was already covered by my other participants, but in general, they're going to restructure the actual situation of the police. They have problems with corruption is a big problem inside the police organizations, and I believe they're going to strengthen the actual organization there is right now. So I believe this is the most important part, working on the ethics of the police groups in state of Rio de Janeiro.
Thank you. Paulo, are you seeing any bump in Temer's poll ratings because of this?
No, but Toledo would know. President Temer is a completely discredited leader, and he may hope.
Jose Roberto, are you seeing any popularity in the polls?
Not publicly, no, but we have access to some government polls that shows that he's getting a little bump in his unpopularity, so he's going probably from 1 digit to 2, very low 2, like
so we're talking like
8%,
7% to 11% sort of thing?
Maybe, yeah, something like that. But let me just tell you a story about how is the situation in the city. Just 1 week ago, just after the intervention, one guy, a sergeant from the army, a sniper, bought a gun to provide security for himself, and he was going from his home to his work during the night, and he was stopped by those thieves, and he was killed during the action. So they stole his gun, and the police recovered the next day, and the policeman who took the gun and brought it to forensics, when he was going home, he was killed also. So this is more like what's the situation here. Even for the police, and even after even for the police and for the military, even after the intervention. Now, what we are seeing is you don't see, if you come to the south part of Rio, you don't see any army soldier, any military, you just see the regular police. But what they are doing is going to the more peripheral areas of the city and starting to take photographs of the people who live there, just to get an idea who is traffickers or not. Right. So this is not becoming a very good thing.
Paulo, I want to talk to you about the effect on the election, because as you brought up at the top there, there are presidential elections coming up. Temer is very low in the polls. The Social Security reform initiative that he wanted to push is essentially dead. This is a replacement. So is this election going to be fought on security, public security, and where the army police line should be?
I think it will be a very important subject. According to polls, it's very high in people's minds, and it should be. I'm curious about how this intervention will play on that, because it really, this gentleman, Jair Bolsonaro, congressman from Rio, very right-winger, radical, had this subject for himself. Let's see how other candidates now will confront this issue. The governor of São Paulo, who will run, he was elected 4 times in the largest state in Brazil. He is at the low teens in the polls. He may have a good story to tell if he is capable to articulate. Violence rates in ranking in São Paulo is much lower. It's a third of that in Rio. This will be an important story. I think the political campaign, the presidential campaign, also election for governors, election from Congress, this will be probably the top issue in debate, depending on how the congressmen, the candidates frame it. It will be, curiously, a very short campaign, 45 days instead of the eternity of 2 months or 90 days before. There is here an opportunity for politicians to define their visions about this, but it will be very, very tough. And let's hope that the intervention produces something good, where the military maintain the peace and they maintain their reputation. They are the institution mostly respected in Brazil today. I don't see, just one thing, Nathan, I don't see much room for military coups in Brazil, etc., for one particular reason. It's a very important reason. The military don't want to have anything to do with that. Right. They are not responsible for the current mess, and they have signaled time and time again that they are fulfilling their constitutional role, and the people that mess this up, which are the civilian politicians, should fix it.
Antonio, Brazilian media is always very vibrant, and there's a phrase, if it bleeds, it leads. This has been dominating a lot of newspaper and media coverage. Are you seeing signs that it's extremely popular?
The intervention is approved by around 80% of people in Rio, according to 2 polls taken by Ibope polling company. Admittedly, one of these polls was ordered by the government, but there's no reason to doubt this, the independence of this poll. And there were other polls last year showing a similar approval rate. Around 80% of people in Rio wanted the military to intervene. So this intervention is popular. And in political terms, I think Jair Bolsonaro, the far-right candidate, which has tremendously bad views on human rights issues, has been apologetic of many, of rape, of homophobia. I think that he was trying to be seen as the pro-security, as the tough guy.
Yeah.
But two of his key propositions, he has defended military intervention against crime. Well, the Michel Temer government, which is a center-right government, has done that. And he has defended a public security ministry. Well, it has just been created by the center-right government of Michel Temer. So I think that this intervention weakens his position. And the recent measures by Michel Temer in trying to strengthen himself actually weaken Jair Bolsonaro.
Jose Roberto, last word. If I was planning a trip to Rio with my family, would you encourage me to come? Would you think tourists, it's okay for tourists? The idea of the army being on the streets is not exactly what you want in a tourist brochure, is it?
Maybe next year. Maybe.
Really?
I wouldn't recommend right now. Yeah, not right now, because this is something that nobody knows what's going to happen. And just to take part in the previous discussion, many military are going to be candidates in this election, not just Jair Bolsonaro. There is going to be many generals, colonels, rank and lower and higher rank military going through the Congress and things like that, which is a first. And you have already two generals as ministers, because the new defense minister is a general, and you have the spy master at the palace is a general too. So military is growing power in Brazil, no doubt about it.
Well, on that note, we'll have to leave it. Thank you so much from Rio de Janeiro. We have from Sao Paulo, from London, and of course, Paulo here in the studio. That's all we have time for, but the heat does continue the conversation online. Join us on CGTN America's Facebook page to comment on this or any other show, or chat with us on Twitter at CGTN America. I'm Nathan King in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much for being with us.